you notice that he's not critiquing the Christian faith by appealing to a standard that overarches all human beings and that is obligatory for all of us. When he says things like substitutionary atonement is immoral, well, by what standard? Who says? What do you mean immoral? What worldview considers it to be immoral, and why is that worldview in charge of the Christian worldview? All ultimate truth claims are, to use postmodern jargon, totalizing. You can't talk about everything without talking about everything. And what Christopher has to do in order to critique the Christian faith is he has to borrow ethical standards from the Christian faith and run a reductio, where he says, according to the standards that you adopt as Christians, here, let me climb into that. Let me climb into the Christian car and see if I can drive it into a tree. That's what he's doing. But he doesn't have any car to drive of his own. Right? Why? Substitutionary atonement is immoral. How come? Who says? Christopher said that morality is innate, but notice that that's coming from an evolutionist where everything's up for grabs. The other thing is, and this is very important to note, I did not say that Christopher does not know the difference between good and evil, right and wrong. If you read his book, or read his book on God is Not Great, or if you read virtually anything else he writes, it's very, very clear that he has a very acute sense of right and wrong, up and down, righteousness, unrighteous. He would have made a very good Puritan. You're welcome. And to wrap it up, there's a difference between knowing the difference between good and evil and being able to give an accounting of it. My challenge is not that he doesn't know right and wrong. He does. But how can you account for it, given an evolutionary time and chance universe?
So I want to suggest this, that far from atheism delivering an adequate explanation for morality, it dissolves it. And it's a problem that's been around for centuries. How can something mindless and impersonal like the universe impose a sense of morality upon us? The Dostoevsky was very perceptive, and I've had many Russians agreeing with me when he said, if God does not exist, everything is permissible. He's saying that the foundations of morality are removed, and Nietzsche predicted exactly the same thing. So I find that trying to get morality elsewhere is something that is doomed to destruction.
He famously said, if there is no God, everything is permitted. Okay? If in the natural world stronger organisms eat weaker ones, the survival of the fittest, what basis would an atheist have for saying that it's wrong for stronger nations to subjugate weaker nations, or indeed it's wrong to let the poor and the weak simply starve? What basis do you have for saying that there's any reason to protect the weaker from the strong, if that's the way it is? But when you talk about morality, I'm asking you, whose morality? I'm trying to put to you is, if there is no God, there is, as it were, no higher authority to establish the values that we should seek to live by, then what possible argument do you have against allowing the stronger to consume the weak? I want to put to you then, Ray, the question, which is, if there is no God, what is the basis for believing that human rights should apply to particular
There's no real basis. You can do what you want. If the civil laws allows it, if you can get a government to allow you to do it, like the fascist governments, then you can do it. There's no real reason. There's no ultimate justice, so you can do what you want.
No gods, no life after death, no ultimate foundation for ethics, no ultimate meaning in life, and no human free will are all deeply connected to an evolutionary perspective. You're here today and you're gone tomorrow, and that's all there is to it.
Dr. Will Provine, professor of the history of biology at Cornell University, gave us another disturbing glimpse into where Darwinism can lead.
I read that book so carefully, I could find no sign of there being any design whatsoever in evolution. And I immediately began to doubt the existence of a deity. But it starts by giving up an active deity. Then it gives up the hope that there's any life after death. When you give those two up, the rest of it follows fairly easily. You give up the hope that there's an immanent morality. And finally, there's no human free will. If you believe in evolution, you can't hope for there being any free will. There's no hope whatsoever of there being any deep meaning in human life. We live, we die, and we're gone. We're absolutely gone when we die.
American officers arrive at a Nazi institution seized by First Army troops. Under the guise of an insane asylum, this has been the headquarters for the systematic murder.
So what is this place?
During the Second World War, 15,000 people were killed here.
Why were they killed?
They were killed because they were people with handicaps.
Why kill them? What's the point of killing them?
People who were not able to work, people who were not able to live by themselves, that they were useless eaters.
Useless eaters.
And life unworthy of living.
This idea grew up in the 20s. So long before National Socialism, biologists, anthropologists, they thought that maybe mankind could, or the government could interfere into the growth of the population.
I see.
And they had the utopia that they would have a society without illness and without handicap.
Alles Lebensschwache geht in der Natur unfehlbar zugrunde. Wir Menschen haben gegen dieses Gesetz der natürlichen Auslese in den letzten Jahrzehnten furchtbar gesündigt. Wir haben unwertes Leben nicht nur erhalten, wir haben ihm auch Vermehrung gewährt. Die Nachkommen dieser Kranken sahen so aus, die tiefer stehen als jedes Tier.
So this was a Darwinian concept?
Yes.
And also a Malthusian concept, very much Malthusian.
Malthusian?
Thomas Malthus, who said that there was a shortage of resources, English philosopher, so there was a shortage.
Yes, but the Nazis, they relied on Darwin.
They relied on Darwin.
Yes, Darwin and German scientists.
Patients were led down this hallway to Nazi doctors who decided who would live and who would die. I wanted to explore this connection further, so I met with the author of From Darwin to Hitler, Dr. Richard Weikart.
Hitler and many of the physicians that carried out this program were very fanatical Darwinists, and particularly wanted to apply Darwinism to society.
Was wir uns unter der deutschen Jugend der Zukunft wünschen, ist etwas anderes, als was die Vergangenheit sich gewünscht hat. Wir müssen einen neuen Menschen haben, auf dass unser Volk nicht an den typischen Degenerationserscheinungen dieser neuen Zeit runtergeht.